Failure to grow on social media is failure to go viral. As a generalization, it's like if your stuff isn't blowing up, you're not producing stuff that people want to share. The algorithm is so weighted toward that which pulls more people onto the platform or that which keeps people on the platform that if your content gets people to want to watch more of your content, it's going to win. And especially if your content gets people to want to share it, to get other people to come watch your content on the platform, it's going to win. So I have to accept that if I don't have the growth that I want, is because that isn't happening. And so I've tried to figure out why that is. And I came up with 8 reasons why I think my stuff isn't catching on. Hey there, friends. So I wanted to shoot a video to sort of process through my own frustration about the fact, frankly, that my audience isn't bigger than it is. And that may sound like a silly thing to be processing or even like an arrogant thing to be thinking about, but it just is what it is. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be vulnerable. I work really hard and I've been doing it for about 3.5 years now since I started putting out content. It's gone okay. And I guess there's one result that's come from everything that I've done that is extraordinary, right? Which is to build Entra. That is enough. I'm not boo-hooing, but at a personal level, I'm going to be really honest and say, like, I put so much into trying to give value away that if the only metric I use to sort of evaluate how that's going is my business that's built on paying customers, that in of itself isn't really the feedback I'm looking for. Obviously, I want to grow a great business. I want to continue to grow a great business. And I have an amazing team that's helping do that. But in terms of me just giving freely value to the world, I want to build a huge audience because I want to have a huge impact of people separate from and at least before anybody buys anything from me or goes and joins a business. As this whole thing progresses, Entra and Jeff, they have kind of a symbiotic parallel relationship, but like, I don't want the only metric of my success to be that I built some big company. I don't want to sound thankless about that, but I want to build an audience of millions of people that I am freely giving to and serving and helping, because not everybody's going to be the right fit for Entra. Not everybody can afford it. Not everybody is in a place in their life where they can utilize it. But I believe that what I'm trying to deliver can help everybody. The reason I want to shoot this video, again, sort of at personal level, is to process and try to distill some lessons and figure out how to improve. But also, I feel like there's a lot that can be shared, and it can be something itself of value for me to share, because there's a lot of people out there that have messages they want to send out to the world and value they want to deliver to the world. And it can be really, really frustrating to feel like you're not getting the traction or you're not getting the attention that you want. So here, what I've tried to distill are 8 reasons why I think my social profile hasn't grown more than it has. Hopefully what I can learn from these 8 reasons and try to course correct, and also hopefully give value to anybody else that's trying to build an audience. And fundamentally, what I've realized is that failure to grow on social media is failure to go viral. As a generalization, it's like if your stuff isn't blowing up, you're not producing stuff that people want to share. The algorithm is so weighted toward that which pulls more people onto the platform or that which keeps people on the platform that if your content gets people to want to watch more of your content, it's going to win. And especially if your content gets people to want to share it, to get other people to come watch your content on the platform, it's going to win. So I have to accept that if I don't have the growth that I want, is because that isn't happening. And so I've tried to figure out why that is. And I came up with 8 reasons why I think my stuff isn't catching on. And I'll tell you straight up, one of the reasons this is so present for me is I've recently gotten to be pretty good friends with a guy named Alex Hormozy, who may see this video. Nod to Alex if you see it. I've seen him blow up a 1 million person plus audience in 6 months. And I consider myself very aligned with him. We talk a lot about a lot of the same stuff. I think we approach business in a lot of the same ways. We're like very personally aligned. We've gotten to be, friends. And so I look at his stuff and I'm like, how is it that his stuff is taken off and mine is still like frustratingly slow to get traction? And it's been really helpful because I can kind of compare and contrast his approach and my approach. In light of that, like I said, here are 8 reasons why I think that my profile hasn't grown more than it has, and that hopefully you can learn from this. Don't let this happen to you, right? So first of all, it's funny. I think social media is so useful, or producing organic content is such a useful mirror in which to see yourself. And the first thing that I have to admit and really own is that I'm still really concerned about impressing people. It is what it is. I worry a lot about I want to seem impressive to people. I want to help people, but I also want to impress them at the same time. And I think that when I deliver my content, a lot of times I'm thinking in the back of my mind about appearances, how it's going to look, how it's going to come across. And the thing is, I feel like I give myself a pass where it's like I am trying to help people. I know that I'm genuinely trying to serve and deliver value. So then I get a pass for the fact that I'm also trying to sound smart when I do it, or I'm also trying to be seen for what I've accomplished when I do it, or I'm also trying to, make sure that my ideas are presented in a way that's unique and people go, ooh, I've never heard it that way before. Man, this guy's so insightful. Or like there is a lot of, I think, ego and pride wrapped up in the way I deliver my content. I suspect that if I just served, period, the end, and that was it, and there was no like layer of ego on top of it, I think it would probably go better. I suspect that even if people don't interpret it that way consciously, I think they can feel sort of almost like a desperation in the content. And again, it's not for lack of a business result. It's just like I can't get out of my own way of wanting people to be impressed by me. I don't know, whatever. So anyway, the next thing, it's actually evolved into a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And I got to believe I'm not the only person that feels this way, where you look at what you do and how you do it. And you're like, I know that my content is just as good as this other person that has a way bigger audience and a way bigger following. They get invited to speak and they get in, this and that. I've developed a chip on my shoulder where it like pisses me off that I'm making content and I know I'm impacting the people that I'm impacting, and I get a lot of great feedback, but it's like, why isn't it reaching more people? Why isn't the algorithm giving me more favor? Why am I essentially not getting more credit for the hard work that I'm doing? Comparison is the thief of joy. Like we know this, and yet I'm as guilty of it as anyone. And it's actually turned into a little bit of like a toxicity where I kind of have like this resentment. I don't resent my audience, but I resent the environment in which my audience is found, the larger environment of like, for not giving me a bigger audience and treating other people better than me, better in quotes, and thus, i.e. mistreating me. And it's the way I'm interpreting the situation, I think is actually polluting the energy of my content. I don't want to sound too woo-woo, but I got to think that it shows, or it's felt at some level. It's like an energy vibration, this chip on my shoulder about it. The next thing, and I think this is a really practical thing that you can apply and you can kind of grade yourself on. One of the challenges that I have is I simultaneously produce this organic content, but I shoot ads for Entre. I'm like the spokesperson for Entre. Entre's visibility, people don't know it's Entre. They see Jeff Lerner, but it's the ads, the paid ads that are out there acquiring customers for Entre absolutely dwarfs my organic content in terms of exposure and visibility. So if, I don't know how many impressions I get organically a month across all the platforms. Let's say it's 1 million. Well, Entre gets like 50 million. Entre's ads get something like 50 million impressions a month. So the vast majority of the way of people's impression of me comes through Entre's paid ads. The reality is the message and even the feeling of Entre's paid ads versus Jeff's organic content, they're not perfectly congruent. My organic content, it's the real nitty-gritty truth of entrepreneurial success, business growth, personal development, personal transformation, this unlocking of human potential that I am so all about, and using entrepreneurship as a vehicle to do that. And my ads, or Entre's ads, for which I'm the face and the voice, there's a saying in advertising, sell the sizzle, not the steak. They're well copywritten ads, right? They deliver great messages around great products and services that are building a great business. But there's just a difference between the way somebody comes across in a paid ad and the way somebody comes across in organic content. For example, I look at my friend Alex, and it's like every single thing he puts out, he's able to say, I have nothing to sell you. And the reality is I can't say that. I have a 50-to-1 ratio of messages in the market of me essentially pitching something. And I think I just have to accept that the reality is I'm the front man of a business that is still trying to do great work in the world, and it's helping thousands and thousands of people to learn entrepreneurship and build businesses and change the trajectory of their life. But I'm paying a price for that in terms of my organic content traction and my perception as a social media influencer. I don't know how to quantify it, but I know I pay a price for it. And I think for anybody that's going to be out there trying to pitch a business, but also build a brand, build a social brand, you just kind of got to accept there's a little bit of cross purposing there that is going to take a long time to work itself myself out. And for me, I'm just still in the middle of that. The next thing is, when I started online, when I started my social media, before Entre existed, before Entre ever had a product to sell. I just produced organic content for like the first 9 or 10 months I was online. I started in September of 2018. Entre didn't sell its first product until almost August of 2019. So what's that, 10 months? And for whatever reason, I just got hammered. I got literally a lot of hate very early on. I got this face. It's the only one they gave me, right? I have a history of a lot of bullying and a lot of people trying to tear me down around my looks. And I still get a lot of comments and stuff that I have a plastic face. I don't know if that's it. I mean, that's the way I think I processed it or, interpreted it initially, is like, well, I looked a little different, and that's always been kind of what gets me targeted, at least as a kid, right? Like we all carry all this residue from being kids. And I don't really know the reason. I think it's a combination probably of that, and probably the fact that I talk a lot about money. I'm trying to teach people how to make more money. I think dealing practically in the world, like people's lives are better if they make more money, and I want to help them do it. But that's just a very triggering subject for a lot of people. And they immediately sort of assail your motives if you talk about it. And in my case, I am selling something, right? But it kind of, I think, puts a target on your back. And then probably also, I have to be honest and say some of this, like wanting to impress people, I think I do come off a little bit potentially superior or supercilious, maybe even literally just using the word supercilious. Like that's case in point, right? I probably need to do a better job of filtering myself to just meet people where they are. I went to a really, really elite private school growing up, and I hated it. I ended up dropping out. But the bottom line is I had amazing education shoved down my throat from a really young age. And I had very high achieving, I was going to say erudite, and there I go again, right? Parents that like valued literacy and verbal ability. And I think sometimes I speak in a way that makes people think I'm a pretentious asshole. And maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but I don't do myself any favors by, sounding like a guy who's auditioning to be a professor at Harvard. I really don't do it intentionally. And I think in the modern world, gosh, the combination of some random guy you've never seen before popping up in your feed, talking about helping you make more money, and then coming off really like a sort of academic and cerebral, like I just managed to piss a lot of people off. And that happened a lot very early on. And I think that this is why I hired a growth hacker on Instagram, is like I had all these haters attacking me saying like, you're a scammer. If you're so legit, literally people would say, if you're so legit, how come you only have 2,000 Instagram followers or whatever? And I felt like I needed to like flex or front or prove myself or come off bigger than I was. Like who I was and what I had done wasn't enough. I swear, I think sometimes I haven't, put that down. I still feel a lot of times like I need to flex or I need to prove myself through my content. And first of all, it's exhausting. And secondly, I don't think it's effective. I think the people that like my content, they like me for me, and they can see the me beneath the striving. But I think the reason it doesn't catch on in a lot of cases is because like, who's this asshole trying to show us how successful he is, right? And a lot of that I think is a hangover from getting hit so hard in my early content. I'm the kid who got bullied, who almost ends up like angry and resentful from that experience. And I think that happened in the micro with my 4-year journey doing social media. And I think that happened in the macro with my 43-year journey of being alive on this earth. And so, for whatever it's worth, I think that you have to do some real frank self-analysis and make sure that you're not using your content as a way to like work through your personal demons. Or if you are, that at least you're upfront about it and it doesn't bleed in a way that contaminates your content. Anyway, the next thing is I think that I do sometimes sacrifice quality for quantity. I came out of the gate with a pretty frenetic pace of production. I think there's a difference between doing a lot because you have a lot to say and because you're really passionate, which I do and I am, but I'm also really busy. There's another level of doing a lot where you're doing it for the wrong reason, which is because you're afraid of obscurity. And for me, I think sometimes I feel this pressure to keep up my content because I'm afraid if a week goes by without posting, that I'm going to like disappear into oblivion. And it's like, it's a fear-based pressure when the reality is I'm running a big company and I'm doing all this other stuff. And it might be really hard for me to produce content on a regular. It is really hard for me, right? I have to schedule it in, and then we like get together with me and the guys, and I'm like, okay, we got to get 15 videos done in like 6 hours or 3 hours or whatever time block we have, because we got to keep up this schedule, or else, we're going to disappear into the abyss. And it's stupid. It's self-defeating, because never make content just to make content. Never make it up just to keep up some arbitrary pace that you think is going to get you favor in the algorithm. Speak when there's something to say, right? Anyway, I think that as things have gotten busier, I have felt this pressure to keep up how I started. But when I started, it was all I was doing. It was all that I had. And now it's like, again, it's almost another way to front and try to maintain appearances instead of just authentically saying what there is to say. Okay, so the next thing is I allow my frustration with social media to become frustration with my audience. I actually have a really antagonistic relationship with social media platforms. I honestly kind of fundamentally dislike them. I have a really cynical view that I've developed that's all anger, all meanness is really just a proxy for fear. And at the end of the day, I'm afraid that I'm doing this work and it's going to fail, or it's going to not have been worth it. And that has morphed into a certain amount of anger and resentment and contempt that I think, unfortunately, I paint with a broad stroke, and my audience gets caught up in it too. Like I said, I hate Instagram, and it's in my mind, it's I fucking hate everybody on Instagram. And frankly, I should have a lot more gratitude, even if it was one person, than for the 2 billion that, may not even know who I am because the Instagram gods haven't shown me to them yet. So again, to sum that up, I think I allow my frustration with these platforms to morph into almost like a misanthropy, like a contempt for humanity, that even though I'm really trying to serve and be positive, and I'm all about uplifting, my whole brand is unlocking people's potential. But sometimes I think I'm guilty of what it is that I'm trying to help people overcome, which is being a heavy, contemptuous force in the world, because these platforms piss me off so bad. Anyway, the next one is I invest in creation, but I delegate the interaction. I'll say it straight up. I'm so freaking busy. And so I put my heart and soul into creating content, but then I have somebody that does the interaction for me. And I do check my inboxes and I do answer some comments here and there. But half the time I'll go down the rabbit hole of engaging with an asshole that leaves a critical comment, when I could take that same time and engage with 10 people that are positive. I feel like I do some, but I could do better. The reality is I should probably be a lot more engaged in the conversation, the ongoing back and forth, instead of just starting conversations and then handing off the dialogue piece to a team member or something. And it's not just one-to-one, you're commenting or you're going back and forth with somebody in a comment thread or even a direct message thread. But the reality is you're building goodwill that's contagious. And the other people, if it's in a comment thread, people are going to see it and they're going to go, I like this person. I like the back and forth energy. Or even in a direct message thread, somebody might say, man, I messaged this guy and I never even expected to hear back. And then I got into a conversation and I really like him. You should check him out, right? Even though I have an amazing team that does a great job of, I think, interacting in my voice, at the end of the day, there's kind of a purity that isn't there because I'm so often not involved in the ongoing conversation. And then the last thing is I do think I come off as unrelatable sometimes in my content. The reality is I am really, for some of the reasons that I've talked about in this conversation up to this point, around having this chip on my shoulder, this something to prove. I've carried that my whole life. And I think it pushes me to have an edge, almost an intensity that may not always be that healthy, and certainly isn't always that relatable to people that are the audience that I'm trying to reach are people that are here for something really positive. And when I come off as this super intense, almost kind of high strung, guy that just pushes himself so freaking hard, which I do, probably doesn't seem that appealing and certainly maybe not that relatable. It is what it is. You're supposed to be yourself, but I think there's a version of me that's actually a lot more chilled out than maybe what comes across in a lot of my content, because I'm trying so hard to help people. And I tend to, because I can be cynical and because I do have this resentment, I can sometimes sort of explain the world to myself as people being in their own way. And then I feel like it's the purpose of my content is to get people out of their own way. And it almost comes off parental or aggressive of you need to change and do better and improve and be excellent and have different priorities and push yourself harder. And it's like, I think it doesn't feel as loving as it should, as my heart actually is. So anyway, like I said, I come off unrelatable because I'm pushing so hard. And I don't think people want to be pushed. I think people are looking to be drawn to something because of how it feels. Anyway, those are my 8 reasons. I'll recap them. I want to help, but I also want to impress instead of just wanting to help. I have a chip on my shoulder about providing better content than other people that are more popular or more well-known than me. And again, I think I have kind of an attitude about that sometimes. Third thing is there's an incongruency between my advertising, my customer acquiring content and my organic value providing content. And then the fourth thing is I got hammered so hard early on by haters and critics that I still feel like I need to prove myself. And I'm sometimes trying to flex in my content in a way that probably just comes off as insecure. And then the fifth thing is sacrificing quality for quantity. Again, feeling like there's this arbitrary pace I have to keep up, even if I frankly don't have time. And so then I just shove stuff out there that's not maybe my best or not fully, it's not thoughtful. It's not as thoughtful as I'd like it to be. The sixth thing is allowing my frustration with the platforms to become frustration with the users of the platforms instead of gratitude for the people that are using the platforms to actually support and consume what I'm doing. The seventh thing is investing in creation, but delegating and to some degree neglecting the actual interaction, the real communication that happens behind the content or from the content. That is where I should be probably putting more of my time in building relationships. And then the eighth thing was coming off as unrelatable because I'm pushing so hard and that sometimes my desire to help people doesn't actually come off as very loving and kind. In that sense, not very attractive. Yeah, this has been my attempt at some humble and vulnerable self-analysis. I certainly hope it helps me, but especially I hope it helps you and that you can take something from this. And let me know your thoughts. I'm going to take my own advice here and say, I'd really love to know what you think. I'd really love to get your comments and feedback on this. I'd love to have some conversations. If you have advice for me, I'd love to hear it. And if there's anything I can serve you with in return, I'd love to do that as well. So thanks for watching and I'll catch you next time.
Hey, if you liked this video, then you're going to love this video.
If you struggle with laziness, you need to stop. Laziness is a form of evil, and in this video, I will explain it to you and hopefully terrify you into not being lazy anymore.